Alright kids, settle down and take a seat, history class is in session. To start things off, here is a question. Who is widely known as the King of Heroes during his rule of the Sumerian people in the city-state of Uruk? That is absolutely right. I am talking about the one and only King of ancient Mesopotamia, or well, at least his version in the Fate universe. Like I stated before, he was known as the King of Heroes, which I actually just didn't state before. But oh wait, I did say that before. Never mind, I'm retarded. But he possessed all things in the world and was regarded a despot due to him being 2/3 god and 1/3 human. His divinity made him more of a god than a king around his subjects. Although he is called the King of Heroes, this does not mean he was a hero king. It literally means he was the king who ruled over all heroes with his godlike powers. Since he was in possession of all things, he was the owner of every single legendary relic in the known and unknown world. The Sword of Selection Excalibur, the Spear that never misses Gay Bulk, etc. Gilgamesh has the originals in his pocket dimension ready to go at all times. He is, for all intents and purposes, mankind's oldest hero, and as such, all other heroes are derived from his story called the Epic of Gilgamesh. In this story, Gilgamesh alongside his closest friends Enkidu went to confront the beast of the gods and protector of the forest Humbaba. They also confronted the gods themselves like Ishtar and her father Anu. After losing Enkidu to the anger of the very gods he had offended, Gilgamesh sought out the Herb of Immortality. Seeing Enkidu return to the earth had changed something in Gilgamesh, as a switch was flipped on. He started to loathe death itself. Eventually, Gilgamesh had found the herb, but it was stolen from him by a snake who had succumbed to the simple emotion of hunger. He continued living until he gave the rule of Uruk to the next king, and thus his story ended and he was recorded into the Throne of Heroes, where it became possible to summon the King of Heroes himself during the Holy Grail War to fight as a servant. Now, Gilgamesh is an ego-stricken tyrant who still believes that everything to ever exist just belongs to him, for he is the king of everything. He also has an extremely narcissistic personality because he truly believes that he is literally better than you. And honestly, regarding his money, powers and status, he probably is. He's better than me at least, like holy shit. But aside from kind of being an asshole, he is also ridiculously strong. He has access to all of the legendary relics in the world, which he keeps in his personal pocket dimension called the Gate of Babylon. He can shoot these priceless relics at his opponents by chucking them out of his Gate of Babylon. Yeah, I know, he is literally an archer in Fate because he chucks trillion-dollar swords at his opponents through a pocket dimension. I'm still mad that he just couldn't like give me one of them so I could just... never mind, whatever. Now, you might be thinking that he couldn't possibly do anything to Dragon Ball characters, right? Like, they're strong as hell. Well, you're kind of wrong on that one. His strongest noble phantasm is actually capable of wiping a country off the face of the planet, if not way more. It's called Ea, his strongest noble phantasm, which is credited to actually split the heaven from the earth and essentially created the version of the earth we know today. Because back in the day, heaven, earth and hell were all like combined in the Age of the Gods. But Gilgamesh just said, fuck it, don't like this, I'm splitting it. So now we have heaven separated from earth. And personally, I believe that a full power Ea is capable of being planetary level, if not galaxy level. But you know, there's no hard evidence on that, but I do think there's enough evidence that he could alter a planet with it. So, you know, I'm comfortable placing him at planetary level. So if we start looking at placing Gilgamesh into the Dragon Ball universe and place him against guys like King Piccolo or Piccolo Jr., I am 100% convinced that Gilgamesh would rip them a new one. You have to remember that he has the original version of every noble phantasm known to man. Noble phantasm being a term in the Fate universe of like unleashing a weapon's true power, like a legendary sword like Excalibur is the noble phantasm of King Arthur, etc, etc. He has the literal strongest sword in Ea, he has the strongest shield, he has the fastest bow, the sharpest spear, etc. And to add on to that, each one of his magical items has unique abilities to add to their strengths. Gilgamesh is basically that uber prepared player who has collected all items and reached max level before the first boss in an RPG. Gilgamesh can just use the prototype of, let's say, Gay Bulk to one-shot all of the humans like Tien and Yamcha. A poisonous strike to the heart that will never ever miss and is guaranteed to hit is not something these guys can just counter, especially this early in the series, since we know blades work just fine against the Z fighters, like an example of that being Tao slicing open Tien's chest. Tien was not able to just block that easily. And there's also the fact that these legendary relics would probably be a lot stronger than an average sword. The Namekians like DKP and Majunior could potentially regenerate from this, but there are a plethora of other ways Gilgamesh can cook them. He can obviously just disintegrate them with Ea, but he could also use Proto-Excalibur to just send them all on an all-inclusive paid vacation trip to the afterlife. Ereshkigal will be very happy with that. Now, the Saiyans would also not be an issue, to be honest. Raditz and Nappa would just get swept. Neither of them is capable of withstanding the sheer force of noble phantasms like Proto-Excalibur or Ea or many more, honestly. Even Vegeta would probably not be able to do much against the sheer utility of Gilgamesh's arsenal of noble phantasms. Now, I understand that this sounds weird because, you know, Vegeta is like planetary level and shit. Like, he could at the very least do real damage to a planet, but so can Gilgamesh. The thing with Gilgamesh is he doesn't look impressive. Like, I mean, he looks intimidating with his armor and shit, but like Vegeta, we've seen these energy blasts and stuff. Gilgamesh just has all of that power compacted in like his weapons. Like, they look like regular swords, but they pack a real punch equal to like planet destroying blasts or like galaxy altering things like reality marbles, whatever. Like, if you ask me, Gilgamesh would probably just tap at the likes of the androids. I am in fact going to place Gilgamesh at the actual Android Saga itself. As you can see, I have made some minor adjustments to the tier list by separating some sagas like the Android Saga and the Cell Saga into separate entries because people were telling me that like it's not clear enough this way. So, you know, I take the feedback and I try to implement it as best as I can. And now, before you click away, the video is not over yet. Even though I personally have placed Gilgamesh at the Android Saga, there are actually arguments to be made that he would be able to stand against the actual gods in Dragon Ball. Depending on how literally you take the mythos of Gilgamesh, he could theoretically beat guys like Beerus and Whis, because his arsenal of bullshit hacks and super specific items that will allow him to cheese his way to victory is just pretty much endless. One great example of this are his Chains of Heaven. These chains are directly meant to capture and hold a god in place. And if you take the mythology literally, this would work on Beerus and would completely immobilize him, leaving him completely defenseless. Now, the reason why I believe Gilgamesh would do so well in the world of Dragon Ball is because human mythology is really fucking overpowered. Gilgamesh is at the level of being called damn near omnipotent. If you believe that all of his mythology and the effects of his legendary weapons would be pure fact, he could probably solo his way through the entirety of Dragon Ball Z and probably a huge chunk of Super too. His ceiling is incredibly difficult to determine. We don't even know most of his noble phantasms, but the ones we do have knowledge of are so incredibly broken that I personally believe Dragon Ball would be in for a pretty good ass whooping. But the reason why I personally cap him at the Android Saga is precisely because we don't know the majority of his abilities. We also don't know if all of his noble phantasms would work the same way in Dragon Ball like the way they do in Fate. So I'm being pretty careful with placing him too high on the list, but I think the Android Saga is a pretty fair place. Because for all we know, some of his noble phantasms would have minimal effects in Dragon Ball, like the Chains of Heavens not being nearly as effective as the myth describes them to be. But still, Gilgamesh is a definite planet buster, at least I believe him to be one. So I believe he would clear the Saiyan Saga pretty easily. I also believe that he would have the utility of all of his other noble phantasms to just best Frieza. Frieza's too cocky for this. Frieza would not think of dodging a spear that goes straight for his heart because he would be like, what the fuck's a spear going to do to me? But Gilgamesh would have the one spear that penetrates all defense and just one-shots enemies. Like, he's really unfair. The androids with their unlimited energy, and specifically Android 16 being non-organic, would be someone that I could see Gilgamesh losing to, because in the end, Gilgamesh is still just a human. He has the most powerful defenses, sure, but any attack from Dragon Ball Z that just slips past his defenses would seriously injure or kill him. Android 16 being fully robotic could potentially catch Gilgamesh off guard by surviving a normally lethal attack and collect a W. But like I said before, depending on how literally you take the myths surrounding Gilgamesh, his true power ceiling just skyrockets way up. So I am super curious as to how far you guys think Gilgamesh would make it in Dragon Ball. Do you think I was way too lenient on him and believe he would lose way earlier on? Or do you maybe believe that he would make it way further than the androids? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, as I use the remaining time in this video to flex my Gilgamesh on my Fate and Order account. He is grilled to level 100 with max skills and max gold foes. I even managed to grab a second copy of him to raise his MP level to 2, and I also played this game way too much, so he's also at bond level 10, nearing bond level 11. But I won't keep you guys here any longer. With that being said, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more similar content in the future, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell icon to never miss another video ever again, and I will see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching.